Canada's new $50,000 GST rebate for first-time homebuyers is officially law. This took place on March 12th, 2026. So this just happened here. And this is going to get new home buyers or people who are buying homes that have been completely renovated a $50,000 GST rebate. Under this new legislation, first-time home buyers purchasing either of these types of homes are going to get this $50,000 up to $1 million purchase price. If the home exceeds $1.5 million, the rebate vanishes completely, but there is a scheduled change between $1 million and $1.5 million to get a little bit more of a partial rebate on this as well. Kyle, what do you want to drop on here and talk about here with this $50,000 GST rebate? How's it going to help the GTA plus the Vancouver market?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I know that there are first-time home buyer benefits in place up to that 836,000 marker in Vancouver. In Toronto doesn't really move the needle. Having some sort of exemption for this upwards to $1.5 million does move the needle for home buyers wanting to get some sort of benefit for that. And I think it's there's two sides of the ledger here. The reason why this is really in place is because the market is soft. They can't sell these products. They're looking at something to do. The other side of the coin is if the government's not getting that GST on these homes, this is a lost revenue for the government. So are we going to get now higher tax to make up for it, right? It all kind of has to come and go from summer, but I think this is definitely a big win for homeowners. And especially if you are thinking of buying or if you bought in the past, there is a cutoff date, right? So this was backdated. They voted this in or whatever the process was for a while, but it didn't make law and just until recently.
But yeah, this goes all the way back. March 20th is the date I've got here of 2025.
Yeah, so it's backdated. So you can apply as long as your purchase agreement was signed after March 20th, 2025. It was funny. I had a deal last year and literally days before that, I think it was just a couple days before I had applied to buy Newcon, and they were just a couple days away from it and couldn't get it.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a problem that I think they're trying to fix, and that is just to get some product to move, because we've got builders here in Ontario who are just like, what do we do? Do we cancel the project? Do we turn it into a rental development? What do we do? So hopefully this will stimulate some movement. This is going to increase the previous cap, which is only $6,300. So this is going to increase things substantially, right? If somebody buys $1 million home, they're going to see a $50,000 rebate. If they buy a $750,000 home, they're still going to see $37,500. And then if you're able to maybe buy a starter condo, you're going to get $25,000 rebate on that. Obviously, it goes a little bit higher, $25,000 rebate if you're going to go to, north of $1 million there, but still substantially better than what they were seeing before, which is amazing for people. Like everything else, there's stipulations here on who actually is going to qualify for these and who is not. So you actually have to be, of course, 18 years of age, at least. It has to be a Canadian or permanent resident who is living in the country. Your home must be the primary residence. You can't buy this as an investment property and take advantage of the rebate here. And both the purchasers, if you're buying, let's say, husband and wife, they both must qualify. It can't just be you and not your spouse. It has to be both of you who actually qualify. And then this is going to go from that date mentioned that Kyle said there, the 20th, 2025 of March, all the way until December 31st, 2030. So they're giving us a little bit of legs to cover some of these developments that are maybe just being started today, and to get people out there to actually buy something and to get off the fence if they're thinking of maybe going with a new build.
For sure. And I think why I really thought that this was a win, especially in our major markets, the whole thing about first-time home buyers, it's meant to get someone an actual family home, right? Not just a starter condo that all of a sudden they're going to grow out of in a couple years. This actually gives people in both of our markets here the advantage of buying like a decent duplex or townhouse that they can stay in. In Vancouver, obviously, they're not building brand new single family homes, but in other places, in some of these other markets, you can get a single family home for that to take advantage of. I did want to share my screen because I do want to, for all of us, to understand exactly what what the tiered system is. So to get the full $50,000, it is at essentially $999,999. You'll get that $50,000 back. When you get up past a million, up to that 1.5, it is tiered. And I just wanted to read or show you the example here so that you understand. I don't want you to think, hey, I'm saving 50 grand on this $1.5 million purchase. So you can see here, example of the reduced rate between 1 to 1.5. An eligible individual purchases a new home for 1.25 million. A new home valued at 1.25 million is the midpoint between 1 and 1.5 and is eligible for 50% of the maximum rebate of $50,000. The individual is eligible for a rebate of $25,000, which is 50% of the $50,000 maximum rebate when all the conditions for the rebate have been met. So even if you go a little bit higher, you are still getting a pretty substantial lift, because I know for myself, when I bought new construction, this was years ago, the limit was, I don't know what the limit was, 755,000 or 855,000 to be able to get that exemption. It's dramatically improved.
Yeah, and I think some of the caveats that people need to understand here is this is new construction, and these are tax rebates. These aren't off of the purchase price, right? So for anybody who's thinking you're getting a deal off the purchase price, not quite. You
Good
usually
point.
have to actually pay tax when you buy a new property. That's the only time that you pay tax. Everything resale, tax is built into it, at least in Ontario, unless that's different in Vancouver. You guys don't pay HST out there on your property prices,
No,
right?
no.
Perfect. So one time taxes on a new build. So you're getting some exemptions here. The other caveat that is, it's still unfortunate. New build almost always is going to require 20% down. So although it does open the door for you to get the rebate on the tax side of things, if you buy $1 million home, the builder is almost always, at least in my area here, looking for 20% on their scheduled before you're closing, which means $200,000 of a down payment. Me and you have talked about this before we even clicked record here. The biggest barrier that we seem to have with a lot of our clients is, guess what? The actual deposit and the money going towards that piece, because you have your deposit and then you've got the remainder being mortgaged, and then you got to make your mortgage payments. So you also don't want to put every penny you have towards the property right out the gate either. So there's still some barriers. I think this is a great pilot program for them, or not a pilot, official program now to actually have done. It's going to save some people some money who want to go new build, and those who want to go that route, it's going to be something they're super happy about.
Yeah, and just check in with your province as well, because we don't have HST here, but we do have something called property transfer tax, right? So on the purchase price, you pay 1% up to 200,000, and in this scenario, 2% up to that 1.5. So it's just removing one of those barriers. If you want to really hit it out of the park, if you can get new construction, at that 835,000, 836,000 limit, where you do get a PTT exemption and then don't pay GST, that would be your best case in Vancouver. That's going to be an investment property, a condo of some sort. But there are a couple programs in place, and this one being quite meaningful.
Yeah, and I think this is going to lead well into our next topic. But before we get there, if you guys have made it this far, smash, tap, click, whatever you need to do, hit that subscribe button. We've got lots of viewership on the channel. We want to get that subscriber count up. If you subscribe, click the bell. It'll tell you when our next podcast is released. We're launching 2 a week. You're going to get one every Monday from us and every Thursday or Friday. And the next topic that we wanted to touch on here is tied to taxes again. Ontario is actually planning, and I'll pull it up here, to give you some more exemptions, or at least try another new little pilot program here. So they're planning to remove HST on new homes for 1 year. Doug Ford had just announced this the other day on the 25th of March. Now, with everything, there's always caveats, there's always timelines, and we don't have to dig too far into this. This is basically another big sign that developers are having a significant struggle moving properties. So what can we do? I don't know. Let's just remove taxes on HST side of things and see if that helps speed up the process. Me and you, I don't know where you stand. I stand really firmly that resale right now makes more sense. You buy for today's market, whether it's up or down, doesn't matter. You buy for today's price. Whereas resale, out here, you might be waiting 2-3 years. We don't know what that market's going to look like. I'd feel real crappy if I bought for $1 million today and I had to move in 2 years and it was worth 850. I wouldn't feel too hot about my decision. So that's at least my thought on that. What do you think about just going new build versus resale before we get into this article here?
Yeah, I think it depends on your situation. For myself, I've been involved in 4 property purchases personally. They've all been new construction, every single one of them. I was able to get into my first place before the market really took off here in Vancouver. And then I was able to essentially leverage the equity of these pre-sales to get where I'm at. And then, as I explained, my financial portfolio here, but it's allowed me to essentially leverage one into 3 properties with 3 income producing properties in there that pay off my rental properties. So it's hard to do that now. And that's the reason why I bring that up. When I got in 2013, pricing was well below. Now it's a little bit, it's harder. But the nice thing about it is, peace of mind. You have a warranty. I used it in my current home. This is a new construction build. We had a lot of issues with the home. We had home warranty help us with a lot of like some pretty big issues with it, which was great, right? And that is something that is fantastic. The only kind of crappy thing is you have to pay for it, whether it's GST or property transfer tax. I mean, this one here for you guys, $130,000 savings. That's crazy, right? So it really depends on your situation. And then right now, I'm not a lover of new construction unless you can find a developer who is so distressed to sell that you're getting huge value because you're paying like a future price on that property.
Yeah, you are. You're paying for what they think the market's going to do. And the problem is builders are not going to list their properties for less than what resale is today. So they're not going to future value it as a negative, really. There's always going to be a little bit of an increase going new build out here, at least compared to going with a resale product. But it makes a lot of sense, right? If you have some warranties and you have your Terrions and things like that, it could potentially really benefit you if you have an issue. You buy resale and your, shingles blow off, you need a new roof, you got to go and do that. If you've got some issues or some flooding, that's on you. And that's really based on your home inspection that was done for $500 or $1,000, right? So home ownership comes with costs, regardless of whatever way you do it. There's costs that come associated with it, but having a little bit of warranty, nobody's ever complained about having some coverage on some issues. But this new pilot program that he started up here, it's going to take place starting April 1st. So by the time you're listening to this thing is going to be active, and it's only going for 1 year. What that means to me is they're just trying to get rid of inventory that's ready to go now and trying to get things moving, stimulate the market a little bit. This is going to be $130,000 up to, so that'll be the maximum. That'll be for homes valued up to $1.5 million. The qualifying maximum would be $130,000 rebate here, decreasing the value of the home at 1.85 million, which will qualify for 24,000 rebate. So it's going to be a substantial difference. If you go from $1.5 million home to a $1.85 million home, you're going to see that drop off quite substantially. That being said, in the GTA, so not unless if you're downtown Toronto, it's going to be more than 1.5, but outside the GTA, you can get yourself a nice double car garage, single family home in this price range, 2,000 to 2,200 square feet. So it's going to give you some good family home for the future for you, right? Now, I don't know. I think it's great. It's going to stimulate the market. I think ultimately, as we see new developers put product out there, it's a tough sell to buy new development right now and just wait for the next home to be built in 2 years or a year's time and guarantee that you're not going to get a better price today on resale. So this is a good program. Just like the last one, we don't need to dig into it too much. It is just going to cover the tax portion. It's not a rebate on the purchase price, nothing like that. Before we hop into our Nova Scotia interesting article that we want to cover, let me know what you want to finish off with here.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, your HST, and it's something we didn't touch on in the first one. What's important when they scrap that GST can't be applied into your mortgage, right? So that's cash that you're having to put down when down payments, and this is going to tie into the next topic about having enough for down payment. If you have to pay in cash for your GST, that's a huge issue that they've removed. In Vancouver, your PTT can go into your mortgage. Does HST go into your mortgage in your way?
It does not. So I've done both. I've done resale and new construction myself. We bought a new construction condo close by, and you're closing, and all of a sudden you have your HST portion that is, hey, lawyers, make sure you transfer your HST on closing here. So you had to fork out. In my case, it was not a big condo, but it was still $27,000 in HST that was required on closing, beyond the 20% down that we put for the property, beyond the levies and development charges, right? So it'd be nice to save on these taxes. It's going to be a huge savings for people. Now, there was a way to get it back if you're using it as a primary residence, you could send in some paperwork, qualify to get your HST rebate back, most of it. But in this case, this is going to benefit
Yeah.
everybody here, I think, right?
And I mixed that up. PTT can't be absorbed. The GST can be absorbed. I just mixed those two up there. But
Yeah,
yeah,
no worries.
you think about that too, having that removal of that tax on a 25-year mortgage. What would be the interest over 25 years on 130,000? The
Yeah.
savings is a lot more, right?
The savings is definitely a lot more. And that's going to bring us into, the biggest barrier. The biggest barrier is what? It's the down payment. It always is the down payment, especially for first-time home buyers. And provinces across Canada have tried to do different things. Obviously, we see pilot programs happening across the country in different ways to try to stimulate the housing market, to try to put more legislation. At least in Ontario, we've had some landlord pilot programs out here. So there's been all sorts of different things. Nova Scotia is doing something different. I think anybody who wants to get into the market in Ontario or Vancouver might be like, hey, this looks like a great thing out the gate here. They are weighing the benefits now for this pilot program of a 2% down payment. Kyle, have you read into this one very much, or do you want me to take the lead here?
Yeah, go for take the lead. You got it on screen there.
Gotcha. So the pilot program here, I'm just going to read through some of the important parts and I'll highlight them as we go. The program is actually going to apply to owner-occupied homes that are priced up to $570,000 in the Halifax Regional Municipality and the East Hants, and $500,000 elsewhere. So you're going to get a little bit more on that Halifax regional side of things. Loans issued under the pilot are not insured by federal agencies. Instead, the province provides a deficiency guarantee in place of a traditional mortgage insurance. Now, the big thing as I was going through this article is this only applies to 14 specific credit unions that they're going to be using here for these specific loans. And I think a lot of people are going to say, wow, 2%, that's great. It's going to allow me to get into a home. But what that actually does in my mind right away is it says to me, are we going to put people in a position to own a home who don't have enough money to actually keep making the payments for a home? I think if you only have 2% on $500,000, what does that come out to? It's like $3,000 or $2,500 there, right? So if you don't have enough money to actually pay the bills on these homes, what's going to happen? You're going to end up in a position here where you're going to find yourself struggling to keep making payments. I like having the barrier of the minimum 5%, at least in the Ontario side of things, up to $500,000. It makes you feel like you have more skin in the game. You feel like you've saved up more money, and maybe you're more prepared to actually be a homeowner in some cases, because 2% is really just a month's rent here in Ontario. When I'm looking at it that way, it's kind of it's not enough to own a home in some cases, but it's going to open the door for some people, right? What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think it's really dependent on what market you're in. It's like for myself, I would welcome this in Vancouver just because the property pricing is so much higher. I would kind of agree with you if you're in a lower price point and you have a barrier between that, 2 to 5% on something that's around, 4 to 500,000. Should that be something that you should consider? But when you have an average price point of detached around 2 million in Vancouver, and you can't, and now with the mortgage rules, you're now having to put 20% down, right? Anything above 1.5, you have to put 20% down. So that's a huge barrier. If they made some sort of change within that, not saying from 20 to 2, but 20 to 10, that would be a huge win because there's a lot of people here that are dual income couples that can make a mortgage payment, but they don't have, around $300,000 to $500,000 to put on a property. So I think something like that could work in some of these major markets that we're in.
Yeah, I mean, they've highlighted a couple different things here. I mean, our markets for sure. This would be great to let people get their foot in the door. I think you completely nailed it on the head. Is this the market to test it in? I don't know. These price points are a lot lower than what we're used to dealing with. But I mean, everything is relative to the place where people are living in, where the actual jobs are available, and what the incomes are. But there's some concerns that they're pointing out here. It's the cost of borrowing from a credit union in Nova Scotia is typically 1 or 2% higher. So I think this is benefiting the creditors. in some cases too. So they're not even going to be paying a standard posted rate or a great rate. They're going to be paying a higher rate, and you wouldn't get it from a prime lender. You're getting it from a credit union. And if you're putting down 2% and you have no high ratio insurance here, you're going to be stuck with that credit union for 10 to 15 years. So you find yourself kind of locked in with them. So it could potentially pose an issue there. And then you've got the issue of, what if this makes the market go crazy and stimulates things a little bit too much, right? I don't know if this is the fear mongering in the real estate market or not. I mean, we hear this in Ontario all the time. It's going to make the market hot, but that's not always the case here. What do you think about these two things here?
Yeah, it is interesting. I think it comes down to discipline, right? Like if even if you're paying a point or two higher, if it allows you to get into your home and you have some residuals and, but you can, perhaps do some double up payments or some anniversary payments to, track back things on your mortgage and you're disciplined. I think what a lot of people do with these incentives is they'll go to the maximum. They'll completely stretch themselves just to get in. And then they put themselves into a very vulnerable position. I think with anything, you have to have a good budget to really understand your numbers. And depending on, I don't know what the rents are in the province there, if it makes more sense just to get in, even if you're paying a couple points higher, but I think giving more options. But I think from this to the HST to the GST, you can definitely see that provinces are now trying to do things to help bring maybe buyers into their markets and now are maybe competing with these pilot projects to help stimulate their economy, to stimulate their tax bases, to stimulate housing as well. So it's interesting that all these sort of things are starting to come out this year in 2026 in a very tough market.
Yeah, everything to try and make things a little bit better, to try and help people's pocketbooks, and just to try to get people a little bit more excited and happy, like we discussed in some of our other episodes. But thank you guys so much for watching this one. I'd love to know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. And don't forget, subscribe for 2 new podcasts every single week. Thank you so much, guys. We'll see you in the next one.
Take care.